Alright, so I know this is a little bit less than ideal, but I've had some video issues, so hopefully I can step through the video. Um, this was a 25-minute presentation that I did at our annual Admin Academy, and I was working with student services and transportation and coordinating this project around field trips. The overall project was to reset my page, so I'll get the video started and then follow along. So, started off by introducing myself. Welcome. A little explanation as to why the Assessment and Accountability Director of School Improvement is standing in front of you talking about field trips, and the reason why is because I am working on my internship. So the project that I was asked to do was to support student services and transportation in really refining and improving our overall field trip processes. So we've done a pretty extensive job of looking at all of the different forms and resources and thinking through how we can improve those for all stakeholders. And so the next piece that I go into is everyone had been sitting for about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and getting a lot of information shared basically at them. And so I ask everybody to review the 5 purposes on the screen there, which were enhanced learning, real-world applications, cultural awareness, personal growth, safety, and inclusivity, and to pick one of those out that they feel like is the biggest reason for field trips. What do they think is the most valuable and most important for field trips at their particular campus? And then I ask everybody also to stand up and go find somebody that's new, because one of the great things about our Admin Academy is it is an opportunity when we're all together and we get to meet a lot of new people. And I wanted to use this time as an opportunity for us to go and introduce ourselves to each other, and also share a little bit about which one of these ideas would be the most the main guide for field trips. And so in just a minute you'll see everybody stand up, and here they go, they're starting to get up, and look around for somebody that is new. It'll be a little hard to see in the video here, but there were about 9 new people, and each one of them got up, or quite a few people went and tried to find those new people. But I did notice there were quite a few people, elementary to high school, that went and met. Like back here we have a elementary principal and a middle school principal who are in different feeder patterns, who were connecting, but they just took this opportunity to really connect and discuss. And so I will skip the video ahead just a little bit till they get done. And during this time I was also, as you can tell, I'm getting on the microphone here, giving them a 3, or I think I did a I said, just if you could please wrap your conversations up and head back that way. And you can tell they were all pretty engaged, so I gave it another I'm right back here in the back, but you can see I gave it another couple of seconds, I think about 15 seconds, and some people started heading that way. And then I got back on the microphone. If we could please head back to our seats. And I am still on the first slide. You'll notice I put the slides up over here on the right, just because they were a little bit hard to see, even on the video. All right. So here I'm going to do my very, very best to step through basically word for word everything that was said. I'm sure I won't get everything right, but um, all right. So we've got a picture, and I wanted you to think about at your table. You're going on a family road trip. So thinking about this summer, we're going on a family road trip, and we've got two different vehicles to choose from. We've got the vehicle on the left, the vehicle on the right. And I'd like for you, by raising your hand, to tell me which vehicle would you take on your family road trip this summer. And you can see here in this piece that had a few hands raised. Most of them were the right hand when they raised their hand. And so I went over to one of our high school principals and I asked, so why would you choose this vehicle? And she said, well, it's faster, it's more efficient, it's safer, and it's just better all around. And I said, yes, it is better. And most importantly, it's a safer way to get there, right? Not only will you get there faster and more comfort, but we'll get there more safely. And that is a lot like what we've done with our field trip and field trip processes. The basics of the machine are the same. The wheels, the motor, the transmission, the seats. It has both the old field trip system and the new field trip system have the same functions that make them work. However, what we've done is we've really tried to refine the field trip process, provide a lot of support and documentation, and also try to make it safer for you guys as administrators, because what we found was that there weren't some basic policies and procedures identified in our field trip processes that needed to be identified. And we do want you to have a place to reference, like when does somebody need to submit a field trip request, for example. That was not specifically stated. What are behavioral expectations for students? That's an important expectation that we are consistently supporting. And at the end of the day, that's really the goal. It is to support each and every individual in this room, but also to help you along the path of having all of the resources that you need. So next, let's look at what is not the same, like the wheels and the motor. Most of the processes do remain the same. For example, the field trip request form and the approval processes remain the same. The way that we request travel through bus transportation remains the same. The volunteer and background check process remains the same. The field trip parent permission process going through Parent Square also remains the same. The field trip permission slip and the waiver templates are the same, as well as the student to chaperone ratio, the process of communicating with admin, nurses, and then the behavioral expectations. None of those areas have changed, but what we have done is we've added to and brought a lot of that information together, and here are some of the changes that we've gone through. All right, first for 2024-25 is more clarity around the overall planning process. Also, consistent structures for the resources. So we follow the same structure throughout, dividing in-state and out-of-state, overnight and one-day trips, as well as giving a clear statement of the goals and the purposes for field trips and CFBISD, which we had not previously done. The site will be updated. We are ready to roll that update, and we're just waiting to share this information with you. We've also added a detailed manual, so you can go into the detailed manual, and underneath each of the different areas, there are all of the different parts, all of the different facets throughout, and any question that you might have, And we do want your continued feedback on this. So if you don't see what you need, we want that feedback, right? If we need to clarify something, continue to provide feedback over the course of the year, because we do want to make this process as helpful as possible. Next up is our campus turnaround presentation. So when you are ready to present this to your staff, there's a turnaround presentation you can pull directly down. Has most of the key information. We anticipate that the presentations take anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, depending on how far into detail that you go. And we've also added some student contracts. So the overnight contract existed, but it was not organized in a great format. So we've reorganized it to make it a little easier to follow. And then we've also added a set of student rules and contracts for over one-day visits. So just if we're just going within town, we're not staying overnight, we've added a rules contract. Now that rules and contract sheet is an optional sheet. It is not required that your students fill that out, but it is an option for them. And the thing that I'm most excited to share is our sponsor checklist. So I really think the sponsor checklist is really going to help people, especially your sponsors, go through and say, okay, a month in advance, have I done everything that I need to do? 3 weeks in advance, have I done everything that I need to do? 2 weeks, 1 week, so forth and so on. And we've created a checklist for both your overnight and out of state, as well as your 1 day and in state. And so what I'd like to do at this time is I would give everyone an opportunity to review these resources, spend a few minutes digging into them, and then we'll come back together and see if you have any questions. And during this portion, I did have a couple of questions. There was one piece missing from a checklist. And then I wanted to, once we came back together and I asked a few people to share what did they see, what did you guys see that was different. They appreciated the checklists as they went through. And then let me go back to, I'll get playing again here once we get back together. Okay. Go. All right, as we come back together, I want to highlight just a couple of really important changes for 24-25 that we want to be sure we're crystal clear on as we move into this school year. The big one is the submissions for out-of-state field trips or overnight field trips must be completed a minimum of 3 months prior to the field trip date. So previously, we had not specifically stated that, but we do have an obligation in our school district. We do notify our school board of any out-of-state or overnight field trip that's taking place, and we need time to communicate that to the board in a standard fashion. So we have to have the information, know the purpose, know the outcome, know why we're going on the field trip, and then communicate that and then get that on the agenda, which sometimes can take as much as a month. Then once it's on the agenda, we have to give time for the board to review it. And while they don't necessarily, while we don't have a formal approval process, we do want to honor that and have an opportunity, if there were concerns in advance of the trip, to address those concerns in a timely manner. The next one was submission for requests for in-state one-day field trips must be submitted a minimum of 1 month prior to the field trip. Now, at the end of the day, what I told our people is this one's up to you guys, right? You are the principal, and you are the one that is approving the field trip requests. But our published deadline is a minimum of 1 month. And so my only recommendation or consideration would be is whatever you do for one, you need to be prepared to do for all. So if you're going to accept a field trip request only a week before the field trip, right, for one group or one sponsor, then be sure that you can do that for all sponsors. But from a district level, what we will support is if a field trip request does need to be denied because of the timeliness, the expectation is 1 month, and that's our consistent district policy. And we recommend that you follow that policy and require your people to submit their field trip requests at least 1 month in advance. And also, we want to continue to emphasize that the academic purpose is clearly communicated to all stakeholders. Are there any questions? And the question from the lady here in the front was related to field trip planning in advance. So they do a field trip to Europe every year, and they submit that far in advance of the 3 month timeline, but they also submit all of their field trips at once at the beginning of the year. And her question was, is that okay? And Dr. Hamlin stepped in. You can see him. He'll walk over to kind of help with that question. He's our assistant superintendent of student services, and he explains, absolutely, submitting it before the 3 month period is fine. We're not saying it can come anytime before the 3 months. Really what we're trying to do is ensure that we have enough time and that we have the information in time to get it to the school board and get it approved. All right. And next up, oops. I am going to wrap it up and hand it over to Miss Machayo. And Miss Machayo is going to talk about some field trip blackout dates. The purpose of the field trip blackout dates, I'm going to pass this along, is you can see they're primarily Thursday, Friday, and some Saturdays. And then these are posted to our site. They are available. They are linked to the website now. She just went over each one of those blackout dates, and then the questions that came out of that part of the presentation. And I'll get to the part where they're asking. So you can see me stand up here, but the questions revolved around, well, what about swim days, for example, is one that was brought up. And any field trip that was scheduled by the district, right, that was set up, would be permitted. But these blackout dates are primarily around testing schedules. November is when we're doing our MAP testing. So there are several windows when field trips are permitted, but there are several around STAR, MAP, when we really want to avoid doing those field trips. And that also, the purpose of the field trips is an instructional purpose. And so by not making the field trips just on a Friday, we want to continue to emphasize what the goal of the field trip is, and continue to move towards every field trip having an academic purpose and being good stewards of our resources. So that was the majority of the presentation. I will go ahead and link to another video, because this total video was only about, I think it was 25 minutes, and I know I haven't reviewed it fully, so I will link a second half of another presentation that I did, which is about a slightly different topic, but also in the same capacity for these purposes. So thank you.
Good afternoon, my high school people. How are you? All right, this is not our official welcome back. However, welcome back. Right? And today we're going to spend some time really digging in deeply into your data. The thinking behind today was, last year we didn't get our scores back for quite a while, and we really had to wait. And so we have our scores back, and we just wanted to take an opportunity to sit down and dig into that data and structure some time, because I know you've got a lot on your plate, right? Like, we're thinking about rollover, we're thinking about staffing, we're thinking about scheduling, we're thinking about rooms and where people are going. And it can be hard sometimes in the mix of all of those other expectations and requirements to find the time to really sit and look at your data. So we hope we set the day up with the intention of, we have our scores, and we wanted to provide a time and a place, as well as tools and resources to help each one of you dig into that data, discuss it as a team, and also start to think about how you're going to transition. Anything there?
I'm so excited to see you guys today. It's still summer though, so welcome back to National next week.
We do have a bit.ly here. You can follow along. It is case sensitive. It is bit.ly CFE data dig, all caps. So that's a link to the presentation. Hope and I have both embedded some links to resources throughout the presentation. We did ask that you go in and make sure that you're in Eduphoria aware. I don't see a lot of new faces, a couple new positions. We did go into Eduphoria yesterday and just made sure that your accounts were at the right campus, that you're looking at the right data. But if you do run into any issues, we're here to help, and we can fix some of those along through the path. So we're going to get started as we think about data today with an activity that's a pick a quote. And so I've got 3 quotes up here. They're numbered 1, 2, and 3. And I'm going to read them out loud, and I want you to pick the one that resonates with you. And you're going to stand up, you're going to hold your finger up for which one resonates with you, a 1, a 2, or a 3. And then you're going to go find somebody at another table that the same quote resonates with them. If you have a group of 3, that's fine. And just share with them, like, why did you choose this quote? Why does this resonate with you? The first quote, number 1, it is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Number 2, data is like garbage. You'd better know what you're going to do with it before you collect it. And number 3, we are surrounded by data, but starved for insight. So which one of these quotes resonates with you? Stand up, hold your finger up, find someone that has that same number. Oh.
Join us, Leon.
Are you back there?
Let's do it. Because 2 seems like.
I got I'll be
The next big thing is like,
So tell me really about the final
Because I figured that too.
You don't know what you don't know. You gotta see where we're at.
I mean, very much I can see it's passing on. But like, you know what I mean?
Like every year we want to come in and just like, hey, what it is, it's a, new way and everything, but before I just jump into that, I want to see like, okay, where are we at, where are we going, how do we align it, what, so I don't like going through it, I feel like
Looking at that. But that's important, that's part of it.
I'm a big fan of starting just like you know, quick check in, I want to be able to speak like, investors. So what didn't work, what you want to do, and just that confidence, connection with teachers. They try to
Y'all can wrap up our conversation and head back to
It's
your
not
table.
that I'm not quick.
So we did a wedding.
Today, it's gonna be later.
We took it.
Oh, you're gonna be careful.
Yeah, I'm gonna be just burning up. I start every other day. I like post something else. I'm like, I should probably calm down. But everybody's gonna have to read. Just a little bit, like one more week.
So who chose number one? Okay, all right. Let's hear from Ms. Palmer. Why'd you choose? What resonated with you?
It resonated with me in terms of the volume of times you're hit with very facts, right? And they're like, this happened, and it's like, hold on, let me take some data collection before I actually like react and you know, consider a couple things. But sometimes it's hard, and you want to like fix right away.
Yeah.
You have to remember
Right.
that. Let me consider some things.
Sometimes we can jump too quickly to action and not really consider all of the data and all the information.
Especially what they bring you in your mind is already structured that way anyways. You're like, right. You know
Yeah,
those facts, you know.
self-fulfilling
Yes.
data, right? Yep. All right, what about number two? Who chose two? All right. Jim?
Well, I'm going to share what Mr. Harmon said, like this, talking about like computer programming, like, you know, you put in garbage, you're going to get out garbage, you got to put in the right stuff to get out the right stuff. So, I mean, just knowing what you're going to do with it before you collect it makes sense because teachers already get a lot of data, and then we get a lot of data, and it's coming from all directions. But when you're actually looking at it, more data is coming in.
Right.
And that data's already changed.
Right.
So it's like, if we don't know what to do with it immediately and how to work with it immediately, then we're losing
Yeah.
ground constantly.
I was a little nervous about having a quote in there that had data and garbage in the same quote, but I chose it because I think one of the things we've always got to think about is like, what is that backwards design process? Because really the backwards design process, right, of lesson planning is really a process to know what are you going to do with the data when you get it, right? You think about, this is how I'm going to assess the students, here's how I'm going to teach to that standard, but the whole time, if you think about like solution tree, what are we going to do when they know it? What are we going to do when they don't? That PLC, that backwards design process, is really a process about just knowing what you're going to do with the data after you collected it, right? Got something to share? Go.
But is it really garbage? You know, like one person's garbage is somebody else's treasure. And, you know, you can look at that like with data as well in comparison there. If you don't know what you're going to do with it before you collect it, then how do you even know that you're collecting the right thing or that you're doing, you know, that piece?
You got to have a plan,
Yeah.
right? You really got to have a plan for what you're going to do with it, right? Okay, who chose number 3? All right.
I I took the word insights not to mean that a person wasn't able to make a conclusion or to get insights, but I took the word insights to mean we're starved for what is really going to work for us. That's what I took it to mean.
Absolutely, right? We're data rich, but information poor. And we really want today to give you some ideas and some guidance as to how you go from looking at the data to helping guide your teachers to take action on it or to make a next step, right? And that's really, we hope to get, obviously we won't be able to get to insights about every piece of data, right? But what we do want to do is dig in deep enough so that you find some insights, but also have some tools and resources and the right questions to ask to help guide your teachers, right? And develop your skills really as an instructional leader, right? The questions that we ask our teachers is critical, right, to the overall outcome at our campus. So it's really about getting down to those insights. Anything else you guys want to share? I really appreciate that dialogue. Thank you. All right. So we've got 3 goals for today. The first goal is we want to spend some time talking about accountability and how the scores are calculated. Part of that will be Hope's piece, or that piece will be Hope's, and she's going to provide an overview of the accountability calculation process as well as some timelines for when results will become, those scores will become available. The next goal is we want you to leave today with some resources to take a deeper dive into your STAR scores. And what that's going to look like is going to be a 2-part. Hope's going to talk about some big district-wide or whole campus-wide analysis of like all ELA, all math. And then I'm going to go a layer deeper into the new multi-test tool, and we'll spend some time looking at multi-tests. And then the last goal is to create a plan for how you plan at your campus to dig into your STAR data. And for that, we're going to be digging into the Lead Forward Leadership Report Card. We're going to look at a sample as a team, and then you'll have some time to plan with your team, how do we roll this out, right, with our teachers and our staff. So I'd like to get your feedback, though, because we have an hour and 20 minutes. And if you want to spend more time on one of these goals, we're certainly willing to accommodate that. We want to provide that. So I'm going to ask you to go to menti.com, or you can just scan this QR code, and it's going to have our 3 goals, and I'd like for you to prioritize them. What is your number 1, what is your number 2, and what is your number 3? And then the rest of our time together will be tailored to what your priorities you communicate right now. You can try to go to menti.com too and just enter that code on the top. Got 8 and I'm waiting on it. There's 16 of us in here. 9, 10. Yeah, they're not word for word. They say the same thing, but the wording's not the exact same. Anybody need more time? Okay. So we're gonna spend a good chunk of time on the leadership report card, because you can see that was a lot of people's number one. So we'll probably spend at least 45 minutes just focusing on the leadership report card. And then we'll do a pretty even split between comparing the performance and accountability scores, probably about 20 minutes each on each one of those pieces. So thank you guys so much for your feedback. That just really helps us. And again, we really want to make this time as valuable as possible. So I will turn it over to Ms. Keene, who's going to start us off with some big picture views of overall how the district did.
Thank you, Dr. Julian.
All right, as occurred with the other video as well, the video works fine, but the sound is only picking up the low band, so I will do my best to go through what was discussed and dub over the sound. This is the first, besides the intro that you previously watched, this was the section where I went in with our campus principals. You can see we've got campus principals in the room, and during this time I went in to EduForiaWare and we did a multi-test analysis comparing last year to this year, and then we'll spend some time walking around working with the each campus, well, it was actually the whole admin team, and then we'll go into specifically the leadership report card from Lead Forward and give them some time to dig into that. So I will get started. All right, so now we've taken a look at our comparison group, and it is time for us to dig a little bit deeper into the data. And to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go into EduForiaWare, and we are going to use our new multi-test tool. Now, the way that I'm using the multi-test tool today is a little bit different than what it'll look like the rest of the year. I just want to remind everybody that for the rest of this year, the multi-test will have, for example, map, and then an interim, and then winter map, and then another interim, and star, and so forth. So it'll have multiple tests across the year, but for the example that we're going to look at today, what we've done is we've created some views that have the 2023 scores so that we can compare the 2023 to the 2024. And I'm just going to dig in a little bit to this data as an example. As you can see, they're organized on the screen by grade. And so I'm going to just look at 5th grade math, and you can immediately see that how they performed. That was our percent approaches in 2023, and then you can see the same in 2024. As you work down, you'll see it's 2023, 2024, 2023, 2024, 2023, 2024, and then the title of each is on the left. So a few things to know as you dig into this sheet is how to navigate up at the top. So if you want to dig into, for example, just your campus's data, you can click right up here on the top. And you can also filter by a teacher, by staff, really any filter that you can apply. So you can see here how the graph changes each time depending on the filter that I put in place. And what I would encourage you to do is just explore around. Really pay close attention to that masters group, that meets group. Of course, always, if you see your masters and meets go up, then you'll usually see a decrease in your did not meets. But this just allows you in one graph to really go in and dig in deeply to each group scores, to each grade level scores. So I'm gonna set a timer here in just a minute and give you guys 15 minutes to explore the 2023 to 2024 comparison score. Just keep in mind this is all student data, so this is not the accountability subset. This will include all students at your campus. And are there any questions? All right, sounds like you guys are ready to get started and dig in on this. So I will get that timer going and start making the rounds. And this person was asking for access rights, so I went around back and talked to our district testing coordinator who can grant and update access. So I went over and said, could you please update that access? And then she was going to help with a couple others, and she had a question about how to do it, so I answered the question and then started making the rounds again. Okay, we'll fast forward through this piece while they were working. All right, so that ends our time. For our next piece, what we are going to do is we are going to dig specifically into the Lead Forward Leadership Report Card. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in and build a leadership report card. This is just a sample. I would encourage you to go ahead and build your own as well, and I'll step you through step by step, and then you can build one. Now, one of the key things is, I ask you during that last few minutes to identify one subject area that you'd really like to dig a little bit deeper into. And so as you decide which one you want to dig into, that will help you define which leadership report card you want to utilize. All right, it looks like everyone has decided what they're going to dig into. So as I said, we're going to build a leadership report card. I'm going to come over to the computer in just a second, and we're going to start building this leadership report card. And really the idea is to look back at how students are doing by standard. So it really helps to know, be able to dig into the test by the standard. All right, so first you go into Aware, and then you'll go to Reports. It's the very first report on your top left. It's called the Leadership Report Card. Click that. Does everyone see it? All right, everyone can find it okay. That's good. And then from here, we're going to start to narrow the different types of tests. So you can pick the term. Yours will automatically default to your campus. Mine, I will have to go in and choose a campus. So I will, and if you leave it blank, then that will do it for the entire district. So for today's example, I'm going to look specifically at the 5th grade science and run that leadership report card. Now keep in mind we will have different standards moving into this year, and as we look at this, I'm going to go and I can pick as far back as I want. You can see it goes all the way back to 15 years. But what I'm going to do is go to 3 years, and then 2 years, and then 1 year. And that'll allow me to see 3 years ago how students performed on a standard, 2 years ago, and 1 year. Now what's interesting about this is you're going to see for the 3 year I've got all 3 tests, so that it's apples to apples and there's only one per test. For this first section, go ahead and choose just the 2022 tests, so you don't want all of them. And then in the next one, choose the 2023 test. And then this last one, the most recent, will just be the 2024. Now, how do you do that? You come over and you just X out the previous years. So I will do that really quickly. So I'll delete this. Delete this. And yes, I know it is a little bit annoying that it keeps skipping down, but you can see here that I've only got the 2022 test, and now I've only got the 2023 test, and then the 2024 test. So that way, we're really looking at an apples to apples comparison over multiple years. From here, you're ready to generate the report. This is a good home page. It's just a starting point, but you can see by reporting category how students performed on the STAR test, 5th grade STAR science test, in 2022 compared to 2023 compared to 2024. So, for example, in this reporting category, students got 65% of questions correct in 2022. In 2023, they got 47% correct. In 2024, they got 52%. So that means across the district, for every student that took the test and there were questions in that reporting category, those are the percentage of answers that were correct. So this might be a good one to dig into. Now, what's the one question that we always have to ask ourselves before we dig into a specific standard? Is it an essential standard? That's right. We have to think about if it is an essential standard or not. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. You can go to the lead forward chart that I've included in your folder, or you can actually also see that, and here's an example of that chart, and it lists over the last 7 years how many times questions were asked by standard. You can also see it right here on the bottom tab. This is the total number of times each question was asked. So as you dig into those, it's a good idea to look at the trends over several years, but then also always have in your mind, is this an essential standard? Now, as you're planning and as you're digging into this document, keep in mind, we want to be thinking about how we're going to roll this out with our PLCs and with our staff. It's not possible for you to run every leadership report card, but just keep in mind that every teacher can run a leadership report card, and it is by campus. So it doesn't even have to be rostered. That teacher doesn't have to have students rostered to them yet, because it's a trend across the whole campus. So this isn't something where you necessarily need to go in and run the report, although if you wanted to, you certainly could. You would just hit print right here. But we identified a learning standard, a reporting category, and so let's dig into that reporting category. I'll click on it here, and then you can see each of the standards. Now, notice this standard, not only was this an essential standard, right, but we were seeing a negative trend. So that's something we think about. Like, maybe that needs a little bit more time. Maybe we need to change how we're teaching that standard. Or, it's always worth noting, now in this case there were 4 questions, so there were several, But if it is just 1 or 2 questions, sometimes it can just be a really difficult question on the test. One recommendation that I would have is it is a very good idea to have the actual sample, the questions that the students took or the questions from the test that they answered, because that's invariably the next question when you're leading this work with your teachers. Now, we don't have those results yet, and I do remain, while we can see them, they are still considered secure test material, and so we don't want to be reviewing those or talking through those questions just yet until they're fully released by the state. All right, so I'm going to give you guys some time to dig into this leadership report card, and then we'll come back together and discuss what will this look like with your PLC.